welcome to episode 168 of Late Night Linux, recorded on the 14th of March 2022. I'm Joe, and with me are Phelim.
It's Paddy, not Patty.
Graham.
Happy Pie Day.
And Will.
Good evening.
Yeah, it is nearly St. Paddy's Day.
It sure is.
Yeah.
And despite what Ian Langridge says, I do like St. Patrick's Day Parade. Miserable bastard.
Yes, you have to be in the Telegram group to get that one. And in order to get into the Telegram group, you have to answer what your favourite distro is, so we know you're not a bot. Anyway, let's do some news then. And the first couple are about how old we all are, it seems. Arch is 20 years old.
It can't be.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm still yet to really try it. Yeah. It's that one that's just 6 months away. When I have a bit of time, I'll give it a go and see if it's a bit like Gen 2, which I tried back in 2003.
Well, it's made me think I want to try Gen 2, because now I've got reasonably powerful hardware. It will only take a couple of hours to compile, in theory.
Oh, you've never compiled OpenOffice, have you? Or LibreOffice as it is now?
Well, you can get binaries for a lot of the heavier applications, but then that's sort of defeating the point with Gen 2.
You're Gen 2ing wrong there, yeah. I think.
Yeah, I still think of it as a young distro as well, which is weird.
That's because it's always so fresh.
Yeah, true.
I know what you mean, though. It does feel like it's a relative newcomer, and I'll get round to trying it at some point, and I haven't done. But it still seems to be growing in popularity. I don't know if this is me just spotting it more often, or perhaps their users are more forthcoming about their use of distro. But it still seems to be growing in popularity, and it's still as relevant as it ever has been, if not more so.
Yeah, I think it's pretty remarkable. The distribution itself is like quite different, maybe with the exception of Gen 2. I'm always amazed that it has become so successful, and even like people recommending it as a first Linux to install, or saying that you won't have any problems with it, and people seem to just be able to follow the instructions and get along quite happily with it, maybe. So, Arch just showed that you could do something different and still be really successful.
And of course, it's the base for SteamOS on the Steam Deck.
Yeah, and it seems like they've made some interesting decisions with that. I mean, making it read-only and basically atomically updated by Valve is a good way of getting around its shortcomings, while still having all the advantages of it being Arch-based, which is a cool idea, at least for a device.
The other bit of news that's going to make us feel old is the web is 33 years old now.
I'm trying to do the maths on 22 minus 33, but I can't. Luckily, there's a KRunner plugin for that. Oh, no, hang on, that makes no sense. Minus 11? I did the maths wrong.
It's a good job you've got a calculator.
1989? Oh, Jesus.
I don't remember the web being a thing when I was, 12 or something. When I sort of first got online, it was through bulletin boards, and then at university, it was things like Kermit and Finger and stuff like that. I do remember using a very early version of Netscape in those days, but I don't think I'd really had much to do with it until the mid-90s.
Yeah, that's exactly my experience as well. I was at university at the time and using the same things and Gopher. And then I was still kind of using my Amiga, and there was people like Demon Internet. So I kind of got back and wanted my own internet connection. And then you kind of became aware that, well, there's this thing you can install that's a bit like Gopher, except for a richer experience. I can remember every site was unofficial then, but I can remember loading up an unofficial version of the Louvre, the museum in Paris, and just kind of being blown away by the potential of just simple kind of marked up documents, but being able to explore a museum with, well, they were JPEGs that probably took 20 minutes to load across a modem, but it still blew my mind. I can remember that very distinctly. And on Demon, on the Wayback Machine, you can still find one of my sites hosted on an Amiga back from, 96.
Oh, Jesus.
But yeah, it's very embarrassing and very very mid-90s, so I'm not going to tell you the link.
Yeah, when I first started in university, we didn't get a university email or internet access. You had to join NetSoc in UCD, the university I went to. And here you were queuing on the first day back to get this account for a thing you didn't really understand what you were doing. It was like, do you want email or do you just want email and internet? I was like, I don't know. One's £3, one's £5. I'll take the cheaper one, and then sit there going, I don't know anybody with an email address. Fuck.
It was such an exciting time, though. I mean, I can see that Joe's just kind of lit the touch paper and then let us just talk about it. But
yeah, well, we might have a bit more of old men yelling at cloud next episode, but let's move on for now. Let's talk about MDN, Mozilla Developer Network. This is their documentation for the web project, and it wasn't looking good for this recently, but it seems to have been resurrected, or it lives on at least.
It's been a very useful resource for a very long time. And until relatively recently, it was always the top hit whenever I was searching for how to do something. And I've seen it replaced with the Microsoft version of this increasingly over the last couple of years. But when I looked into MDN last week, I think, it suggested that they were going to start charging for MDN. Is that what the outcome was?
No, the outcome is that they have spruced it up a bit, and coming soon will be MDN Plus, which is just more features and stuff that you can pay for.
So this is another well thought out Mozilla business strategy then, yeah?
Well, it does sound reasonably well thought out to me that the core product will remain free, but if you want to pay for some enhanced features, then you can. That seems like a reasonable business model to me.
I mean, the resource itself is pretty amazing, all the stuff that's in there, but I don't know. What would you get from Plus, though? I mean, I'm not sure.
Graham, you're the documentation expert. You tell us.
I don't agree with this being the right strategy. I think that Mozilla in particular should make everything available for free. I think that should be its kind of principal objective. And I liked MDN. I like MDN. I was really disappointed when we covered the original story, however long ago it was, thinking that it might go away. It's really great that they've been able to kind of retheme it. It looks good, but the thought of having a paid-for version with additional features I just think is wrong. And I understand documentation is expensive and really difficult to produce, but I think that should be Mozilla's remit. It should be doing everything for free and in the open, and everything should be documented and freely accessible. It's never going to generate enough income for them, I suspect, to help it. So it's just a bad idea. Sorry, Mozilla.
Surely it's better to have some revenue coming in from it than none, and for it to just go away.
I think this fragments the message of what Mozilla is trying to do. It's just going to become a kind of a group of loosely related ideas, some of which they're trying to make money out of them to try and ensure its future, which isn't the clean, concise mission that it needs to have. And then we'll try and fund it as best we can in the way that it's trying to keep the web open. I think that's a much clearer sell to us as users of Firefox and Mozilla than trying to add a little bit of funding here and there. It doesn't strike me as a great business idea, charging for premium content, if that's what it's going to be on MDN Plus.
Mind you, if there was a way I could fund an open web with a strong team behind it and good documentation like this, and they said, we'll charge you X a month, and anybody who's maybe in, it should be free for people who are learning, starting off, developing nations, whatever, maybe us here in the first world, as we are supposed to be, could throw...
Speak for yourself.
Yeah, well, I'm not so sure, but we could throw whatever the price of a burger every month, as they're suggesting $5 a month. I mean, if that actually really helped, if they did budget it out properly, if there was something clear and concise where you could say, if we get X number of people that pay at this rate, then yes, Firefox can be fully supported now. A bit like the way the guy Davison, who does Ardor.
Yeah.
Like, he's got a very clear cut. I need this every month. I need this every year. And that gets me going. If Mozilla would even just do that, then we could actually get behind it, maybe.
And what I really like about Paul Davis and the way that works is that the core product, Ardor, is still free. It's still open source. Yeah. You can build it yourself. And that's kind of what I mean about the documentation. If they kept all the documentation freely accessible by everyone, I wouldn't have a problem with what they do on the outside of that, whether they do their own bespoke training or sell training courses based on this documentation, or, create your own kind of account where you can log what it is you're reading and save snippets or whatever. I don't mind anything like that. But yeah, being a gatekeeper to content, I think isn't what Mozilla should be focusing on.
Well, it sounds like the content will still be free, because they say we're always looking for ways to meet our users' needs, whether it's through MDN's free web documentation or personalized features. In the coming months, we'll be expanding MDN to include a premium subscription service based on the feedback we receive from web developers who want to customize their MDN experience. Stay tuned for more information on MDN Plus.
Yeah.
So it does sound like it'll be value add.
You're right. And I think I'm triggered by the word subscription, also perhaps meaning content when maybe it doesn't.
But I think you're right to be, because it's a slippery slope. Subscription music is evil. Download your music. Buy it properly.
Yeah, I think you're right. Hopefully you're right, Joe.
Yeah, I think you have to take them at their word until they prove otherwise. And they say it's only going to be a few months, so hopefully it's not going to end up like Pocket and just never happening. Something is up with Elementary. I don't think that we can ignore this. We'll link to a Twitter thread by Danielle Foray detailing why Elementary has been a bit quiet lately and that there's quite a lot of politics going on there. This is difficult for me because I'm friends with Danny, but I'm not going to go into the conversations that we've had. Honestly, most of it is right there in the Twitter thread if you want to know what's going on. I don't know what's going to happen with Elementary. It doesn't look great. It isn't necessarily going to go away, but there's always that risk with small distros. And so I thought we have to kind of cover this. But, you know, isn't that just the risk with a small distro? We've seen this before with them disappearing. But isn't one of the great things about Linux that if the distro that you're using does go away, you've got so many other options and migration is so easy, relatively speaking, that it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. It also means that if people want to continue projects that have died, that they can. And that's a good thing as well.
In theory, if someone's willing to pick up that work, but that often doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen, but it's one of the main reasons why I love Linux and open source, because I always feel like if I should be able to motivate myself. If something is really that important to me, then I will go in and have a look and try and fix and maintain something. And everybody has that choice. And so it becomes a good kind of threshold. If it gets past that and people do decide to do it, then it was an important project and hopefully could be sustained.
Yeah, because Phelim, you're using KDE Neon, which is a relatively small distro. It's not even a distro, is it? It depends which way you look at it. But you could easily migrate to Kubuntu.
Well, the funny thing is, I migrated from Kubuntu to Neon, and yeah, I guess I could go back again if I wanted to. And yeah, or I could switch over to the likes of Arch, which Graham runs and hasn't told us earlier, which I was very confused by. But I mean, that is the beauty of Linux ecosystem. It's a very user holds the power centric system. And I think that's a really important thing. And I know the BSD guys love to talk about how they have all these projects that they start and make lots of money from and stuff. But the reality of the GPL is it gives the user the power, not the developer. And while that might be somewhat not good for the developers who are trying to make a buck out of it, and it's hard to monetize it, etc., it is good for the user in the long run, because if you know you can, at least get that info out there, if there's a file format or a desktop environment that you like, whatever it happens to be, you are safe somewhat in that there is a way to get there.
I'll monetize you in a minute.
I meant monetize, didn't I? Damn it. Second language.
Yeah.
I think the other thing is that we should, while these projects are alive and going, we should support them. But it's often easy to forget. Especially with Elementary, it looks so slick, so professional. It gives the impression of being really well funded and safe. And if you see some of the amounts of money that were talked about in the Twitter thread, you'll see that really they're running on empty. And you can just see how so many people are using things like this. We can all do more to support them and help them, rather than just thinking that they're doing fine. It happened to us as well with the magazine. It seems like, you've got your magazine on the shelves. And maybe the magazine was just rubbish. But, we were still actually just bumping along with no money. And it seems the same case with Elementary here.
Okay, this episode is sponsored by Linode. Go to linode.com/late-night-linux to get started with $100 free credit. From their award-winning support offered 24/7 365 to every level of user, to ease of use and setup, it's clear why developers have been trusting Linode for projects both big and small since 2003. Deploy your entire application stack with Linode's one-click app marketplace, or build it all from scratch and manage everything yourself with supported centralized tools like Terraform. Linode offers great price-to-performance value for all compute instances, including GPUs, as well as block storage, Kubernetes, and more. Linode makes cloud computing fast, simple, and affordable, allowing you to focus on your projects, not your infrastructure. So go to linode.com/late-night-linux, create a free account with your Google or GitHub account or your email address, and you'll get $100 in credit. That's linode.com/late-night-linux. Okay, well, inevitably, Miguel de Casa has left Microsoft, hot on the heels of Nat Friedman.
Was he not being hearted enough?
We knew this was going to happen, didn't we?
As sure as the day rises in the morning. But Microsoft have changed, though. They have changed.
They have changed, and at least big parts of the organisation have changed, but this is generally not a good sign, is it?
Nope.
Well, both of them have been at Microsoft or subsidiaries for a long time now, and I imagine that their shares have vested and that they've got a nice stash of cash in the bank and that they're ready to go back into good old-fashioned open source and start a new project and do something exciting again. I think whatever comes next, well, I think one of two things will come next. One will be a new joint project between them, which will be very exciting and very fun to follow along with. Or the second thing will be that they'll just go and live on a desert island and live happily ever after. Thank you very much.
And if it's the first thing, it's definitely not going to be a copy of a KDE project that already exists that they're trying to steal, but that's okay.
There is a horrible, horrible third possibility that involves blockchain and NFTs.
NFTs don't exist.
You really think that NFTs don't exist, Will? I think we need to get this out into the public. You've said it to us privately.
They don't exist. Nobody knows anybody who has ever bought an NFT. This is a fact.
I see tweets all the time from people saying they've bought NFTs.
From robots all the time. The same robots that are writing the news articles that are being picked up and reblogged by so-called legitimate journalists.
It's an interesting theory, and I hope you're right. Although maybe not. Maybe it's worse if they don't exist, and yet Twitter have put in those hexagonal avatars for it. I don't want to believe that the dystopia is that bad.
A negative feedback loop. I love it.
Interestingly, I've not thought of NFTs for some weeks now.
Is this podcast even real?
And so the Earth tumbled into deep space, never to be seen again.
Good.
All right, we have to give a quick mention to Dirty Pipe, mostly because it's a hilarious name for a vulnerability. It sounds like something that would be hosted on muckyjpegs.com. So this is one of the most serious vulnerabilities in the Linux kernel for a while, at least since 2016, with Dirty Cow, which it's somewhat related to. If you want to read about the technical details, we'll link to Ars Technica. There's a fair bit in that article. The bottom line is patch and reboot, and you should be fine. What was interesting to me is that Android is also vulnerable, but only if you've got a relatively new kernel, a 5.8 plus. So if you've got a modern phone that isn't getting any kernel updates, then you're probably vulnerable. Whereas if you've got an older phone that's got like a 4.something kernel, then at least with this vulnerability, you're fine.
Never did I think that the terrible early Android releases would come and save me.
But the Dirty Pipe vulnerability, I mean, did they not think about the name on that one?
Maybe they did.
Maybe they did, but it's almost as bad as when Ubuntu had a big pair of hairy bollocks as the wallpaper. A quick rant about the BBC. They hate RSS and open standards. They've got this app on platform called BBC Sounds. And at first it was just like, hey, download this app and all the BBC content's on there. And then it was like, well, we're going to put a couple of our podcasts on there for the first X number of weeks or months. And now they put Desert Island Discs on there, and that's just fucking too far. Now you have to wait 30 days if you want the proper RSS feed of Desert Island Discs. I think some of the Friday comedy stuff as well. Clearly, this is a hedge. This came from Popey. He's been moaning about it as well, and he says that it's a hedge against when the license fee goes away. They want to have a load of people locked into their platform that then they can start charging for. And I suspect it's also about wanting metrics and stuff. And I moaned at the fella responsible on Twitter, Dylan Haskins, and he just gave me the same canned fucking bullshit answer that they've put in blog posts and stuff about how everyone else is doing it, so we've got to do it. No, fuck you, BBC. What am I paying my fucking license fee for if it's for you to lock away programs that I've effectively paid for behind a proprietary app sign-up wall when you could be using free and open standards like RSS? Very disappointed. I'm going to have to write to them in green ink. It's the only solution.
Why, oh why, oh why?
I just wish there was more we could do about this, but all I can do is just come on here and fucking rant about it and just watch the BBC slowly circle the drain before the Tories finally pull the plug and all we're left with is fucking Murdoch bollocks. The BBC could have been so great, and the BBC News fucked it up by trying to be impartial and then bowing down to the government. And now even the rest of the BBC is being dragged down by this looming fear of getting the license fee taken away.
Yeah, I fully support everything you say there. And Stuart Langridge had spoken about something similar, about how iPlayer is trying to emulate Netflix in a way. And every time they do that, every time they try to be like everybody else, they lose a little bit of their actual unique BBC-ness about it. And that's a loss for the BBC, and it's a loss for license payers. I would be less annoyed if iPlayer and the BBC Sounds app weren't so fucking awful and horrible to navigate, terrible UI, and they're always pushing box sets and things that they think that you want, and trying to find just the most recent episode of something is incredibly difficult, and it pisses me off. So I agree with you, Joe.
And for fuck's sake, the actual player itself on the web, how hard is it? How hard is it to implement left and right arrows skipping back and forward? Every other player, every other site in the fucking universe, from VLC to YouTube to muckyjpegs.org, you press the left and right arrows, it skips back and forward. Just how hard is that?
Oh, if only you knew the real horrors that is RTE Player.
It can't be worse, surely.
Oh, it can, because it's got adverts too.
Oh, so it's a bit like ITV Player.
There's people still watching the rugby game that was on at the weekend, trying to reload their browser page to get a refresh of the match, and it's showing them the ad for the 5 millionth time.
Well, they're just not blocking ads properly.
I agree with you. I haven't got anything further to add. The thing, iPlayer also, at the very beginning, however many decades ago it was, used to be good. It was really at the forefront of streaming and digital program access, and they never really fully reached their potential then with such a huge back catalogue. I felt they've always kind of tried to focus on funneling people into certain streams of content, and it's never really changed.
On to a bit of admin then. And first of all, just a quick thank you to everyone who supports us with PayPal and Patreon. We really do appreciate that. You can learn more at latenightlinux.com/support. And remember, for $5 or more per month on Patreon, you can get an advert-free RSS feed. And if you want to get in contact with us, the email is show@latenightlinux.com. And do check out Linux Downtime. I had a good one with Stuart Langridge recently, where we talked about the open web and Apple's attack on it, or restrictions on it, let's just say. And also do check out Linux After Dark. That show is really coming into its own these days. Those two are also in the ad-free RSS feed on Patreon. Or if you don't want to pay, then you can just get them with regular RSS feeds as well.
Have we made our own app where we lock them in yet?
No, I'm going to work on that. But maybe I'll make it a web app and keep Stuart happy. Let's do a quick KDE Corner then. I say quick, but you've got a massive list of links here, so better be quick.
Yes, I apologise. I'm trying to be quick with them. So just a quick note. The KDE itinerary are at the Wikidata reuse days, which is a 10-day from the March 14th, which is today of recording, up to the 24th, where there are daily talks on, and anybody can register for free. And KDE Itinerary is there on Thursday, March 17th at 1500 UTC, talking about their use of open data. And I think anybody who's into open data, this whole week or 10 days of talks would be quite good. So well worth getting involved if you're into that sort of thing.
And the Steam Deck runs KDE, as we know.
Yes, but it's now on the KDE.org hardware page, which is quite cool, to be honest, because they have a few nice devices like phones, laptops, and now the Steam Deck at the top of them all. So it's quite cool.
Okay, PIM and KDE Gear updates.
Yeah, this is really just to highlight again the amount of work that goes in for actually fixing bug fixes that we may have moaned or had people moaning about before. There's a lot of work that goes in, and just some of the very sort of bog standard bits of software that you use, like calendaring and email, etc., all that stuff, getting loads of work done. And then KDE Gear came out the week that we recorded last, 2 weeks ago, and all the bug fixes that went in there. So I just thought it was worth highlighting the amount of work that does go in, and it's not just all the shiny.
Fair enough. New firmware security tab coming in Plasma 5.25.
Yeah, so this is quite cool. It's just a very simple tab in the devices section of the info center in KDE, where you can get output from the various FUPD elements, which is Richard Hughes' team that develop all the firmware stuff for various things in your computer, like the BIOS, mouse drivers, things like that, Wii dongles, etc. I just thought it was a very cool thing, and it even highlights various bits and pieces of your system that are either tainted or not supported or enabled, disabled, etc. So that's quite cool.
Nice, catching up with GNOME at last, eh? Also, KDE is looking for translators.
Yeah, so, well, I don't want to say this, but maybe some less popular languages that aren't easily covered by the usual translation teams. Well, Irish is one example of it. I'll definitely be there to help them with my fluency. But various other languages that they want to get help in, and they have an email address if you're interested to get involved. And it's a great way if you're not technical, but you have got language skills, or you've got English and one of these languages here where you could help out. So just a quick one.
Okay, signature support is now in Ocular on Android.
Yeah, and we covered the Windows version of this back earlier in the year, and it's just some of the story that I had about getting it to work on the Android system, pulling all the dependencies in, etc. And yeah, so that's now available on Android as well, so worth it if you need that sort of thing.
What's this eco software?
It's one of the goals this year for KDE is to help try and reduce the energy consumption of software. So there are two projects called KDE Eco, and also the Blauer Engel für Voss, which is the Blue Angel for Voss, which is a environmental label that the German government is publishing for energy efficient software. So if you're interested in energy saving stuff, I think it's well worth it. KDE is always trying to reduce the amount of resources required for running the DE. So I think it's a well-worthy thing, and we all benefit from this anyway. So they make the claim that the ICT sector contributes as much CO2 as the aviation industry, which is quite spectacular.
All right, and multi-cursors in Kate.
Yeah, I think this is for people who like the likes of Vim, etc., where you can have one cursor somewhere, be completely lost in your document, trying to copy and paste from somewhere else, not understanding it. But if you're into that sort of thing, in KDE Frameworks 5.92, that'll be coming in. And to be honest, I have, when used to doing something in Nano or the like, where you have the editor mode, it is kind of nice to be able to paste somewhere else where you're looking from somewhere else and not just on the same line again when you forget.
It's really good for search and replace strings as well.
Ah, cool.
Yeah, because all of those things, the cursor can appear in all of those results places, so you can make those edits.
That's pretty cool then.
Right, well, links to all of that in the show notes then, but we'd better get out of here. We'll be back next week when we'll have some discoveries and be talking about being old men, probably. And I think one of those discoveries might even link into that last Kate thing about Vim, but we'll have to see about that. But until then, I've been Joe.
I've been Phelan.
I've been Graham.
And I've been Will.
See you later.